Hello and welcome to a special edition of Talk a Good Game from Hammer's Chat. I am Redhammer and you're probably used to this face by now. I've got a new face for me tonight. It's the chairman of the West Ham ladies team. Stephen, thank you very much for popping on and giving up your time.
Good evening, Gio. It's joint chairman. My dad's also a chairman, don't forget.
Apologies to the joint chairman there. We're going to be talking tonight lots of topics, lots of subjects. We're going to be talking about the past, the present and the future of Stephen's reign at West Ham ladies. Stephen, let's start with as soon as you took over. It wasn't that long ago, was it? You came in at the start of the year. Is that a big task so far?
Yeah, I answered an advert at the end of January and went along, met a few coaches, had a chat about the state of the club, which was not great. A few people were leaving. Julian had been in place for 7 or 8 months and met with Julian, met with Stacey Little, and had a chat generally about what the club needed, and it needed organisation and funding, really. So I hung around for a few games, had a look and see what they were doing. I don't think I actually saw us win, but I saw a few games, and then my dad and I were appointed when our announcement came in early March.
Well, nothing's changed. We're not seeing a win for a while then. That's it. You touched on there, Julian Dicks was the manager. West Ham legend, we're all dying to know. What was your thoughts on Julian?
Well, if nothing else, I get to put my CV that I was Julian's boss. So I think that's every West Ham fan's dream. I met one of my heroes. Julian was interesting. Very, very. As you know, the big thing about Julian is he is what he is. He doesn't put any airs and graces. Working very hard. I think at that stage, when we came holding the seniors up to something, that Julian was doing an awful lot himself, arranging stuff. Stacey was doing fundraising, and really they were taking the burden on with them, and Andy Hills, who was running the development squad. So the sort of 2 or 3 of them were doing a substantial chunk of holding the thing together. So very interesting learning from them about how the club worked and what it needed. And a real sort of baptism of the fire. I think you cease to become a fan once you take on the chairman's role. You spend so much time sweating about getting the stuff on the pitch that you sort of get there and you fall exhausted in your seat for the actual game to start. So interesting challenge, meeting people, just learning and understanding what it is to be women's football. I knew a bit about women's football beforehand, but not in any detail. I didn't have appreciation of the leagues. I didn't have appreciation of how everything really knitted together. So it was good just to take a lot of listen to the experiences of the coaches and people around the club who've some of them been there 15 years.
Yeah, well, we'll touch upon Stacey, we'll touch upon Julian Dicks later on. Stick around to the end of the show, guys. There's potentially really big news at the very end of the show. It's something that certainly has caught my attention. Hopefully it catches your attention as well, and it's well worth listening to. But I'll leave that to Stephen to reveal at the end. Stephen, it's not just all about the senior team, though, is it? There's plenty of them there, actually, that maybe goes under the radar, if you like.
Yeah, where we have under 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s development squad and the first team. So we've got about 100 players who play every Sunday and occasionally during the week. So we have coaches at every level, physios. We have strength and conditioning coach at sort of the first team level. So we have a lot of people moving around every Sunday. A lot of people give their time for free. Organising and just making sure 100 girls can play football as much as they can, which is what it's all about. It's quite a setup. It's quite an impressive setup.
Yeah, well, just so you guys know, I attended a ladies' game not long ago. Spoke to Stephen, spoke to Stacey, and just to see the extent of the volunteers that were there helping out the day, just to make it function, was surprising to me actually. And I'm going to touch upon that later on again. In the summer, Stephen, Julian Dicks obviously left to go join Village. You must have been delighted for him, were you?
Completely. I said so at the time. I mean, it was fairly rushed stuff. He found out, I think, on the 28th of June, and he was announced on the 29th, of the morning of the 29th, that he was on the way to Ireland, I think it was, for the training session there. So he and I spoke briefly, and I congratulated him, and we had a good old chat. And obviously, he said he'd do everything he can to help the ladies out. And I believe still does. He's been to quite a few games, and I think he'll always be a cheerleader for the ladies, and understands it. Certainly, I know from talking to West Ham even last week, he's still concerned, wants to know what's going on with the ladies, wants to help out. So I think hopefully we've got a friend for life.
Yeah, well, Unfortunately, he wasn't at the game I was at, which was disappointing. You told me where he usually sits, so I went and
He heard you were coming. He heard you were coming, obviously.
I think he must have done, but I went and stood where he usually sits. He didn't appear. I was disappointed. Obviously, you had to replace Julian Dicks. Some ex-West Ham players were after the role, weren't they?
We had quite a list. I think we had 10 to 15 who sort of got onto the final list. We had some very impressive CVs, including, I think, a technical director from Inter Milan. We had quite a list of CVs, and as we went through them, sifted, spoke to people, we had people experienced in women's football, people experienced in men's football, some ex-players. Timing, as we sifted through them, some of them couldn't commit the time. Others, on reflection, decided not to go ahead. We ended up with a short list of about 5, and myself and my dad and our club secretary and Colin Bennett, who's the head coach, ran the sort of appointment committee. We interviewed a number of candidates and ended up with Mark.
Well, we'll touch on Mark later. Main club now. For you that don't know, the West Ham ladies aren't owned by the main club, but you, Stephen, have worked very hard, haven't you, to make quite a lot of links with the main club. How's that going?
Really good. It's when I sort of got appointed, it became apparent that the links with the main club weren't very good. It seemed to be sort of one meeting a year, and mostly it was through Julian. So Julian said he'd have a word was had, and it come back, but it wasn't very easy to sort of understand how to run a club when it was effectively through Julian's contacts. So when we got appointed, speaking to Julian as well, I made sure that I could get before the Chief Operating Officer, Ben Illingworth, sit down with him and his team, media team, commercial team, and we just spent a good afternoon just chatting through up at the Boleyn all the types of things that we could do to work together. And I have to say the meeting was fantastic. Go forward, and I've sent them a big long shopping list. It's not a list of demands. When I spoke to David Sullivan at the end of May, and when I introduced myself as the chairman of West Ham Ladies, he almost ran a mile, and we were joking about. Yeah, I think his previous experience is one of the West Ham ladies with a handout asking for money or asking for things, and very much the model we want to do is we want to pay our way. We want to be respected as a club. We want to be coherent as a club, structured like a club. So really, the main club can understand there's a huge difference between the super multi-million-pound business that is West Ham United and West Ham Ladies. And you see only a couple of ladies clubs in the country, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, who are really of any sort of size that could even be understandable to a big international brand. So in women's football, it is really 3 or 4 clubs and the rest, not too dissimilar in many ways sometimes to men's football. But what we're trying to do is really trying to work on our game and not so much worried about asking West Ham for stuff, but really trying to say, well, this is our idea to how to improve us both, how to honour the brand, how to just be responsible with it. I think most of us are fans. Certainly, we have followers of other teams within our club, but we're really about doing the right thing, acting professionally as best we can, working out how we can take our amateur stuff based on volunteers and have some way of dealing with the club. So we're trying to do it on the basis of if we help ourselves a bit, could you help us on a bit more? We're trying not to ask them for money. We're trying to ask them for assistance, so media assistance, advice, commercial ideas. I've been working this week, for example, on the 2016-17 kit we've been ordering today for all our juniors and seniors and everything else, with the assistant at West Ham, discounts, costs, various bits and pieces. It's worth many thousands, maybe £10,000, the assistants at West Ham are giving us just today, effectively. So it's calm, it's businesslike, it's communicating regularly. I'm probably in contact with West Ham on average 2 or 3 times a week, whereas before I think it was 2 or 3 times a season, give the impression that was the contact. So familiarity, just getting them to understand stuff. So when, say, Aditi was in the news in the Indian press, working West Ham United with their links in India, they were very interested in BBC programmes about it, various articles and stuff like that. And Aditi, I think, he did an advert yesterday for Sony TV. And so just dealing with West Ham on that, branding issues, making sure everything's smooth, and just really dealing with it as part of the main club. And I think if we get up to their pace and they trust us, then they'll give us even more support. I think over the years, they've not really... the ladies have been more a problem, I think, than the West Ham would have liked to have seen. There's always things going on in the press or somewhere else, whatever. And I think what West Ham United want from us is a period of calm, really, a period of just let's play some games, let's get some wins under our belt, but just be normal, be simple, be businesslike, and that's really what my main aim is. Because without that, nobody can invest in us.
Well, we wish you luck, and we'll keep an eye on it. But speaking about the main club, someone tried to buy your club. Well, not your club, but someone tried to buy West Ham Ladies Club in the summer. Young Mr. Jack and Dave Sullivans, they tried to get in on the act. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Because this is something that intrigues me, actually, the fact that the owner's sons want to own the ladies' team. I'd like to know more about it, Stephen.
Jack did contact me, and we had a good exchange. Essentially, I'm not going to go too much detail. I think Jack's going into more detail than I'm going to go. But essentially, they were interested, but he didn't really know much about the club. So I spoke about the club, and essentially where I've left it is I've said my vision for the club is to be fully absorbed into the main club. That's the natural. If I can achieve that, then that's a win. I don't think it's ready to be absorbed yet. And I've said to Jack, with the best will in the world, I think let me get it at least going in some sort of sense and some sort of structure, and then let's talk some more. So I'm keen on the idea, but it probably would have been a bad idea this summer because I think there's too many bits flying around, too many bits pinned down, and there's a lot of boring stuff to do. I'm a turnaround professional, and I know what it takes to turn around a business and make it ready for sale, as it were, and it's not ready yet. So when, I think is probably the best way to say it, when the main club buy it, it will be in a perfect condition to leap forward.
Well, we'll look forward to that then. Well, there you go, Jack Sullivan, if you're watching this. I know you watch some of our shows, you little rascal. There you go. The invitation's there for you from Stephen. You touched on volunteers. Like I said, they make your club tick, really. I was amazed at how many volunteers you had when I was there. They were everywhere, taking photos, videoing the game, just doing little bits and pieces, all the ball girls, selling programs before the game as well. You also had a new ground in the summer, Stephen. Entertainment being put on as well. It's all about building steps, isn't it? About putting a platform down, like you said, about getting ready for the big takeover, if you like, if it does come.
Yeah.
How difficult was that, and how exciting is it to be moving forward?
It's good. I think, as I said, when I came to the club, it was Ray and his wife Jane who was doing a lot of the work. Ray was the chairman, and Jane as sort of junior club secretary, and not a lot of other people really helping out. There was one or two. And again, on the playing side, it was Julian, and tried to share the burden and get more work done. So instead of having one or two coaches, we've got sort of 7 coaches, including Mark Nurse, Aidan Lismore, John, there's Colin Bennett, Peter Round. There's a lot more people focused on different bits and pieces. There's Tash Adams, the strength and conditioning coach. We have physios coming in and trying to get more bodies to do more FaceTime, I suppose, with each individual player. And then the same philosophy and organising the ground. Why have one person organising when you could have 5 or 6, not just somebody on the turnstiles, but somebody, as you say, collecting the programmes, helping mascots, just building up. And there's more fun to be had if there's more of you. You can share in the joy of getting a game on, and also holiday cover, other bits and pieces. People are volunteers. Sometimes they've got to work. So just calming it down, making it smoother, making sure there's cover. Now we have a full review at the end of every game. We talk to each other about what worked well, what didn't go well, learning from the next stuff, planning the next games a little bit more in advance. We did have, until recently, possibly the best media guy ever, Tommy Wathen, who I miss terribly. Tommy was getting really into his stride in producing programs which had no place in our league, or any. His programs were superb. With the artwork he was getting on the front and things like that. Tommy is still helping us out with this week's programme. But Tommy's dominance of the media side was brilliant. So we knew about a month ago that he was heading on his way out anyway, in terms of he got a full-time job. So we were looking to sort of try and fill his shoes. So we're still looking to try and... We've got 4 or 5 people taking photographs, filming the matches, but we want to try and bring it together under sort of head of media. So at the moment, I'm shopping for a head of media if there's anybody out there who feels talented enough to take on that role. But all those people together means that you've got conversations going on, and there's a pause for 90 minutes while the match happens, and then we carry on talking about how we get on. So trying to make it better. This season, on and off the pitch, I think was always going to be a season where I was learning a bit, Mark's learning a bit. We're trying to get a feel with Hornchurch, the relationship. Certainly the crowds we've got at Hornchurch were bigger than the Hornchurch home games. So Hornchurch weren't sure what to make of us to begin with, but once they'd seen us, they started opening up all their burger vans and things like that, and making us very welcome, because we had quite a decent crowd. So more to continue. West Ham lending us the Bubbles, the mascot outfit, and things like that. We have the Haverettes, who perform regularly playing Bubbles, local girls band. We've also got another band I was negotiating with this week, who are a full brass band, I think from Tilbury, who will be coming along and performing. I'm waiting to see a video of them before we let them loose on our crowds. But everywhere, just simply trying to improve it, make it a match day experience, because essentially at this level, it's a couple of hundred fans makes a difference between a small club and a big club. A lot of the clubs we play get 7,500 people. We got 248 to our home game. That's a big crowd in our place. There's so many West Ham fans in the Hornchurch area. Another 100 people, and yes, you're talking you're a Super League side effectively. And with my project, where I'm trying to make us as self-sufficient as possible, so any help we do get from outside, such as West Ham or sponsors, is really a top up. It's people through the gate that really makes a difference. In men's football, it makes a little bit of difference. In women's football, it's everything.
Yeah, well, when I went, there was no band or Bubbles the Bear. I definitely went on the wrong game. But I can't. Yeah. The bar facilities are fantastic, guys. The bar has huge windows overlooking the pitch. It's got a beer patio as well, overlooking the pitch. It's raised up compared to the ground level as well. I was quite impressed by the facilities at Hornchurch myself. So do pop along. You'll find out when the next home game is near the end of the show. But back to the summer signings, Stephen. You've already mentioned the DT. You were quite happy with a couple of them, weren't you?
Yes. Do you want to tell me the name of the Italian one that I'm talking about?
I forgot already.
No, Julia Ferrandi.
Julia something.
Julia hunted us down and wanted to play for West Ham desperately. And I like Julia. She's come over from another country. She's got no contacts here, and she's delivered herself, found herself a home, found herself a job because she wanted to play for West Ham ladies. And that's as good as it gets. She's talented. She's played for Italy under-19s, I think under-17s and under-19s. Very talented. She had a couple of games, and she's just serving the last of her 3-match ban on Sunday. So we will get her back after the Battle of Basildon. So Julia, I'm very excited about. We've got a few others, plenty of others coming. Really, at the end of last season, Julian said to me that he got the call from West Ham and he was gone. So really, we lost July to having no manager, and so we were having players coming in without being very clear what the manager was going to be. So we've signed quite a few players, and we've tried to bed them in whilst taking on a new manager as well. I'm quite excited by what I see. I've seen reasonable skills, nice pace. I think you said yourself when you came down, it was a faster game than you thought. And we have our moments where I think we're really zipping it around nicely. Up front, we've been a bit toothless this season, and Mark's been trying to work out exactly why that's going to be. So we've played around. We've just got a new Italian coming in as a striker. She scored on last Sunday, Romani, and the more we can get that ticking, then I think we're going to have quite a decent season. So watch this space. Yeah,
well, at the very start of the season, Hammer's chat spoke to Stephen, we spoke to Mark, we spoke to Stacey as well, because we decided we were going to follow West Ham ladies this season, and we really wanted to push them and make them our niche, if you like. When I spoke to Stephen, he mentioned sponsorship, so we decided to try and raise a couple of £100 to sponsor the West Ham ladies player, and I made a deal with Stephen that I had to be a DT, their keeper. Thank you guys, we did manage to raise £200. We do sponsor a DT. Stephen, the sponsorship must have overwhelmed you, because before us there was Overland and Sea doing it, and then when we took it on, ex-West Ham employee Claret and Blues and Ian Dale all ran with it as well. Plus you had other companies away from the social media side of things that chipped in and sponsored the player. You must be pretty impressed with the sponsorship money you raised.
It was, and still is, astonishing. We've had another couple of sponsors in the last week. It doesn't seem to stop, and certainly from my trying to piece together the club from last season, understand how it ticked. The income from last season was pretty small from sponsorship. And so I was completely overwhelmed. I wasn't expecting it, but it just seemed to have grown in that sort of 2 or 3 week period. It went from very low to enormous amounts. We sponsored, I think, 30 out of the 40 first team players, which is incredible. And so that changed the season for us. That really has calmed things down. That gives us effectively the funding to get through the season. It costs. I mean, we've got after Sunday we're away to Plymouth. That costs something like £1,300 to get the team down there with a coach, hotel, and things like that. And for an amateur team with a very small home gate, that's a lot of money. Can't thank the fans enough really for that. That was a game changer. I've been developing business sponsorship and been doing quite well and getting a few business people to sponsor a game, and I'll be looking to build on that. But yeah, that changed the season for me. That took a lot of worries away, and just thank everyone very much, including Hammers Chat.
Yeah, that's no problem. Proud to sponsor DT. We've spoke to DT ourselves. There's an article on hammerschat.com from a DT. Also on there is going to be an article from the new captain, Katie Bottom, every week. Her first article is up currently about the last Sunday's game, just a general feeling she's got from being the new captain. Now we're going to talk about what happened to the 6 girls, Stephen. Is the topic that everyone wants to know about. Obviously, we're not going to dig into Stacey personally, but just as a general thing, the 6 of them left. As a chairman, do you look back in hindsight and think, not only is it a shame, but do you think maybe it could have been handled better by all parties?
Yeah, my position was more referee than participant, I think. I've heard what Stacey's got to say, and I disagree with most of it. But the other views people don't want to give. They don't want to go on programs and give their views. And so I respect that. We'll sit in the middle. It really, as far as I can understand it blows up around a disagreement about formation, as far as I can piece together. It was a difficult situation where captain and manager were really at loggerheads, and the performance of the team was, depends who you asked. Some people were saying, well, we were set up well, we should have won a game, but we lost it 1-0. Others had a different view. I wasn't really involved until really much the fag end of it. I was aware of what was going on, but nobody had spoken to me. Nobody had come to me. After the Basildon game, which if you watch it, if you watch the highlights and anything else, we were all over Basildon, then lost 1-0. There was an unsavoury incident at the end of the game, which caused Kerry to be released by the manager. And then really after that game, it was the first time Stacey had contacted me directly to express her views. I had a long chat with Mark on the Sunday night, and he told me he was calling a meeting on the Tuesday at training to really have it out and deal with things once and for all. He did. He told me he was going to release a player or two. I think I knew Stacey was going to be released. I'm not sure who else. But in any event, what happened was that the meeting was very heated. There was more than just Mark and the team there. There was all the coaches there who had given me their versions of events. I wasn't there. And in the end, Stacey said she was leaving and asked players to go with her, and 4 people did. So the rest remained. So I don't think the people who left were necessarily the people who were going to be released, or certainly not all of them, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know quite how the maths adds up. But and then it really kicked off from there. So I don't think, from my point of view, and you'll see in my programme notes on Sunday, it's people have made their decisions, really. And these things happen. I'm not very happy with the general rumpus that's followed. I think that was unnecessary. But at the end of the day, I did try and communicate to Stacey through some of the other players, because I don't think Stacey was returning my messages. Simply say, don't make this a sort of line in the sand, because there's never a case where players will say, sack the manager, otherwise I'm going, they always lose that battle. So from my point of view, Stacey is West Ham Ladies. She's been identified with it. She was certainly the player I'd heard of first. she's always going to be identified with West Ham ladies, and I think it's a real shame. It shouldn't have come to this, but there was no meeting, there was no halfway house, there was nothing anyone could do in terms of reconciling the positions, as far as I could tell. I'm not sure. I think the decisions have been made. Time has passed. Some of the players have gone to new clubs. Stacey hasn't. Quite what you do. I think it's just. I don't think anybody came well, and I think Stacey came at least well because she's left the club that she loves, and I feel very sorry for the kid. But there was no real halfway house when she started sort of saying, manager must go or chairman must go and whoever must go. That was never going to happen. So I'm not sure where it could have been mixed. It's for the brief period I was involved, I tried to sort of send a message of don't bring this to a head. But what can you do? I think it's difficult when positions, and particularly in football. So it's more about sort of getting on now. It's very difficult because we had a game against Charlton 5 days later. We had to bring in people who hadn't played with each other against Charlton, one of the top sides. Last time we played them at the end of last season under Julian with Stacey and our best team, we lost against them 5-0. So it was never going to be an easy game. But playing away at Charlton, following all that, was incredibly difficult. I think it certainly damaged us, but it's not something we sought. It wasn't a case of I don't know. I don't really want to go into the details, but I don't think it was a personality clash per se, but it's more than just Mark. There's 7 coaches in the senior setup. There's lots of people to talk to. There's lots of people who could have the opportunity to discuss, be an intermediary, but the positions just sort of got taken, and I'm not sure necessarily it's the chairman's role to interfere between playing staff, particularly manager. I'm not sure what I would have done in terms of if Mark had said Stacey must, for us to work out whether or not Mark was being undermined or whether or not Mark was at fault, because you had the reactions going on. At least this way, we now know Mark has made his decision. What now plays is Mark's team. Certainly, the reports I get back are that it's a happier ship. We drew the game last Sunday. I think we just ran out of puff at the end, otherwise, and it was a 92nd minute goal that caused the draw for Lewis Town. We've got Lewis again this Sunday. Last time we played Lewis at home last season, we lost 2-1 against them. So it's I think we're as inconsistent this season as we were last season, but we are we've got more up against us. I think we had you had the legend Julian trying to turn it around last season. We need to see what Mark's like with a team behind him, because I don't think the players were necessarily behind him. I think Stacey said herself she decided after the first game against Coventry that she didn't think Mark was up to the job, which is very difficult when that's your manager, that's your captain who's supposed to be implementing part of what the manager plans. So I'm not sure there's any real. It's a baptism of fire, I suppose. New season, new manager, new venue, new everything, and then this arises amongst the players. It's different from in a men's team where you've got a professional team where you've got contracts and wages and other issues and things like. You don't get quite this sort of stuff, but under women's football, you can leave at 7 days' notice. So it's probably more volatile. I've certainly heard of more people leaving other clubs. There was about a month ago, the captain of Portsmouth was released. To an almighty fury that was reported in some of the press. I don't think Portsmouth, with great respect to them, gets as much press as West Ham ladies do. So, but they had a very similar situation where the club, without any prior announcement, released the club captain who'd been there for 15 years or whatever, and their goalkeeper. And so, yes, it's a different environment, and I have to sort of sit on top of that and deal with all the stuff that I have to deal with, and try and make sure that there's an environment for people to just play the game, I suppose. We've got, at the end of the day, we've got to get a team out, we've got to get a match going, and there's playing staff, there's people with UEFA badges and everything else. What do I know? How can I tell them to do it any different? You've got to trust the people you hire. You've got to let them get on with it and get involved if they want me to get involved.
Yeah, but just to confirm, you touched on very early there, but you believe that Martin was going to release Stacey anyway on the Tuesday night?
Yes, so that's what I understand, yeah.
But
I think at least one other, I'm not sure of who that was.
Well, I hope the other one left as well. Otherwise, that's going to...
Yeah, I understand it was one of those that left, but I don't have that in my head. So, again, Mark Tommy, who was going to release Stacey, and at least one other, I think, because of the problems he was having in the dressing room.
But Stacey wasn't invited to the meeting on the Tuesday, so...
That's right. She had been suspended on the Sunday.
Yeah, but then how was he going to release her on the Tuesday if she wasn't at the meeting?
I think the plan was he was to have the meeting without Stacey to talk to the other players about what was going to happen. So it wasn't sort of I don't know the specific details. I left that to Mark. My understanding was that Stacey came along with Kerry, who she described as the vice captain, but Kerry had already been released. So there was an element of disobedience, for want of a better word there. That's what was sort of going on. There was no way that Mark could have any sort of structure. There was a power game going on, I suppose.
Yeah, if you want to read Kerry's version or listen to Stacey's version, go to hammerschat.com and they're both on there. I think they're both very honest. You could say that, couldn't you, Stephen? Kerry did admit what she did wrong.
Yes, I read that. Yes, she regretted it. Yeah.
When I spoke to them both, they were both quite disappointed and angry. That at the start when I spoke to them, they were both disappointed and angry at everything that's going on. But by the end of it, they were genuinely upset. But to be fair, that's never been called into question. But after the whole thing,
no, I was a big fan of. I'm a big fan of Kerry. I could sit and watch her sliding tackles all day long. Brutal left back. But no, it was just there wasn't a good side or a bad side. Two sides that felt passionately about how to go forward. Really were intransigent in terms of they didn't really accept Mark as their manager.
Yeah, well,
that's not a problem you can.
It was a car crash anyway, but
yeah.
After that meeting, Stacey tweeted that the girls had left, the six of them had left. Obviously, Kerry admitted she'd been released, so it wasn't quite the six had walked out. There was 5 plus Kerry.
Yeah.
But then West Ham tweeted that they were surplus to requirements. I think that's what everybody wants cleared up, because it sounded like we were getting one message from the girls, they'd left, and it sounded like we were getting another message from the ladies' account. I'm not going to ask who sent that. We don't need to know who sent that tweet. But
no, that was my fault. That was my tweet at midnight, where I'd misunderstood who was surplus to requirements and who had left. So I had was it my tweet, or was it actually a? It might have been the BBC contacted me following Stacey.
Okay, because
I sent the tweet. So
yeah, I think it was the ladies' account tweeted.
Yeah.
Not word for word. There was a meeting tonight, and the manager released several players that were deemed surplus to requirements.
I think the meeting was intended to release players of surplus requirement, which was separate from people leaving, but it wasn't. I think it was alleged, unless I got my wording wrong.
Yeah.
I think Stacey reacted saying we weren't released, we walked, and I think that's a misreading of the quote. Or it might well be a Twitter problem with 140 characters, but it's okay. So it was me who issued the tweet, but it was meant to be. There was a meeting to advise the players that some were being released, and then people walked, but they weren't the same people. But I don't think that comes over clearly.
Okay. So both were correct, I suppose. At the end of the day, they did walk, but at the same time, there was going to be players released. Just what I meant. Kind of ruled out my next question, because I was going to say they were surplus to requirements. How come on Sunday we only had 12 players? And the keeper was the sub who re-sponsored a DT. Her goalie was on the bench and had to come on centre mid. I
was teasing it.
Players? Do we still need players, or are we okay? Or
Oh no, we've got a squad of over 40 in the senior teams. We had development team and first team going out, travelling down to Lewis. I gather we had a number of people picked, and we had a few illnesses and problems at the last minute. It happens.
Yeah.
We've had it's nothing. When your luck's down, other things go along, but I've seen it before, and I've seen it in other matches, and I've seen teams come to us and they've only got one sub because they've been let down at the last minute. Nobody's paid to be there, so you have to remember that occasionally happens. But that's not it's not a factor of people releasing and we ran out of players. We're down to our last 40. Well, say what you like about Mark, he does like a large squad. He likes to look at squad, he likes to measure his squad, and he's got them all competing against each other. So that the two weren't related.
Yeah, to be fair, with the game I was at against Forest Green, they only had one sub, and it was the keeper as well. Because I spoke to the manager, who I think was also the chairman of the club, who also put his own money in to keep the club going, which I found fascinating, and it's something I enjoyed learning when I was down. One thing I have to ask, though, 2 weeks ago against Charlton, a substitute was wearing sunglasses to warm up, and there was another one on their mobile phone. Where does that sit with yourself? I know you're the chairman and it's not your team to look after, but do you not read about that and just think, what's going on?
I didn't see that, and I'm not sure. Did you see that?
Yeah, someone was at the game. There was a person that was at the game spectating, and he was giving updates through Twitter about the goals, etc. And he said that during the game, one girl was warming up on her mobile phone, and there was another one leaning on a fence with sunglasses on.
Well, I didn't see it, so
okay, right. Well, sorry,
hard for me to comment. I think I would say that given what had gone on in the few days before the Charlton game, I wasn't particularly. There was a lot of bias going on in everything that was going on, reporting about that. So I turned off Twitter, I think, for some extent. So I wasn't sure who said what, where, and how. So I did see that, but I wasn't sure who was the actual source of that comment, who'd actually seen it for themselves. It seemed to be circulating around, but I don't know. So
okay. Well, appreciate your honesty there. This Sunday you're at home. We've got big news coming up in a few minutes, guys. So stick around. Sunday you're at home. To me, it looks like a big game on paper. I remember I speak to you now and again, Stephen, and you did say that you thought QPR and Lewis you should be beaten. Do you stand by that? Is Sunday a big game? If you get beat, are you going to be worried a lot?
No, as I said, under Julian last season, we got beat by Lewis. I think at home, every game is a big one. QPR are struggling this season. We are down the bottom. We're out of the relegation zone, and we've got 3 games in hand on the other teams. Some of those games are big games, but it's a little hard to tell. To some extent, I think our season started really last Sunday. As the things were calming down, Mark's had a game or so. He's brought in a couple more from the development squad, and I don't. There's no make or break game, to be honest. Now we've got Lewis, we've got Plymouth away, and then we've got Brighton at home. Brighton are going great guns. They're going to be incredibly difficult to get anywhere near, I think, in 2 weeks' time. So it's I don't see it as make or break, but a win would be nice, as I mentioned to Mark from time to time. But no, we're capable of winning against Lewis and Plymouth. And as per this season and last season, we're capable of losing against Lewis and Plymouth.
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be mid-table-ish. And I think given Stacey, Kerry and the other players were good players, they were. It's going to be harder. At least Julia comes back after the Lewis game. I like her a lot in midfield. She's very creative in midfield, very quick. So I think we will. We'll just have to see. I don't think we're not going to be challenging the getting to grips. And then next season is something where we've all had a season under our belt and we're going to get serious.
Well, there you go, guys. 2 o'clock kickoff at Hornchurch. Only £5 entry to get in. Brilliant bar there, brilliant facilities. Do pop along and support the ladies' team. Before the big news from Stephen, potentially, do subscribe to our channel. Just hit the subscribe button there and pop onto hammerchat.com. Give us your thoughts on this interview afterwards if you like. Stephen, what's the future for West Ham ladies from tonight onwards, if you like? You spoke about just finishing mid-table and looking at next season, but there's a bit of news I really like, and you know I really like it. So
I think you've over built it up too much. I think it's the journalist inside you. No, we are talking about a game at Upton Park. I've had meetings with West Ham United about that. They have said they're keen for it to happen. We're obviously keen for it to happen. But just because both sides want it to happen doesn't mean it will happen. We're working very hard. It's logistically difficult to put on a game depending on other usage at the club, if they have a cup run, etc., pinning down. We have selected a date that we really like. We have selected an opponent that we really like, which we think everyone will be keen to beat, shall we say, to come along and support us. We've got a plan building up. We'll keep on talking to the club, seeing if we can fix something up, and we'll announce the date as soon as we can, and we'll try and give ourselves as long as possible to do that. So it's not an announcement of a game yet, but it's something where we think it could be very big for the club. It could be a great day for us if we get it right. Watch this space. It's going to be something I'm going to end up spending 2 or 3 months organising, because it's very complicated.
Yeah, well, keep your eyes on the West Ham ladies' social media feeds, guys, for that news coming out of Stevens. Ourselves as well, we'll do our best to cover it and make sure someone's there supporting the girls and reporting on the game. But guys, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Hopefully, Stephen has filled you in a wee bit on your unanswered questions. Stephen, thank you so much for popping on and giving us your honest answers.
No problem at all.
Hey guys, hopefully, Stephen will see some of you there on Sunday. Thank you. We've been Hammers Chat. This has been Talk a Good Game. Good night.